She had exactly 11 seconds left to enjoy thinking she'd won. 11 seconds before a door at the end of that hallway opened and tore apart everything she believed about me. But she didn't know that yet. Right then she was still smiling, still savoring the cruelty she'd carried for a year, certain she'd finally landed the blow that would break me in the middle of a crowded clinic waiting room. She had no idea she was the one about to break. My name is Daniela Reyes, and I want to tell you about the strangest 10 minutes of my life, because we've all met someone who mistakes our silence for weakness. And we've all wondered, in some quiet corner of ourselves, what we'd do if we ever got to watch them learn the truth. I got to watch. On a gray afternoon in Portland, Oregon, on the 3rd floor of a cardiology clinic off Burnside, I watched. I was 36 that year. I wore a white coat over navy scrubs, and I'd finally started walking the way people walk when they've stopped flinching at their own footsteps. I had rebuilt everything, every single thing. In the 14 months since my marriage ended, I'd reassembled a life out of paperwork and patience and long quiet evenings that used to terrify me. They didn't anymore. Most days I didn't even think about Mateo, the man I'd been married to for 9 years, the man whose name I'd taken and then handed back in a courtroom in the Multnomah County Courthouse on a rainy Thursday. Most days, he simply wasn't there in my mind. Most days? This wasn't most days. Because as I rounded the corner near the cardiology waiting area, a tablet of patient charts tucked against my ribs, I saw a woman I'd hoped never to see again, sitting in a vinyl chair by the window, purse clutched in her lap like a small shield. And the second our eyes met, her whole body changed the way a cat changes when it spots something smaller than itself. Her name was Coraline Vance, Mateo's mother, and in the 15 years I'd known her, I don't think a smile ever once reached her eyes when I was the one it was aimed at. She stood up slowly, smoothed her blazer, and there it was, that smile, the one that always came right before something sharp. I knew that smile the way you know weather. I'd seen it across 15 years of holiday dinners, the little curl of the lip that meant a comment was loading, dressed up as concern, designed to cut. "Daniela," she said, stretching my name out like she was tasting it. "Well, what a surprise. Still playing doctor in this little place, are we? I want you to notice something." She didn't say still a doctor. She said playing doctor. 3 letters added, and the whole sentence turns into a knife. That's a person who has practiced cruelty until it became a craft. And here's the thing, I didn't take the bait. I felt it pull at me. I just didn't move. I kept my face still. The same neutral face I use when a patient's furious relative tries to drag me into a fight I have no time and no reason to have. "Coraline," I said evenly, "I didn't know you came to this clinic. My sister's having a procedure." She waved a hand, brushing the actual reason aside like it was lint. As if her sister's heart mattered less than the conversation she'd been waiting a year to start, she stepped closer. And I caught it, the same perfume she'd worn for 15 years. Sharp, floral, the kind of scent that fills a room and makes it hard to breathe. "But honestly," she went on, "running into you like this, it almost feels like fate. There's something I've wanted to tell you for the longest time." I said nothing. I'd learned long ago that this woman never needed permission to keep going. "Leaving you," she said, and here her voice lifted just loud enough for the people in the waiting room to catch it, just soft enough to pretend it was private. "Leaving you was the best decision my son ever made. He has a little boy now, with your best friend." And there it was. The bomb she'd been building for a year. I'm going to be honest with you. That is the moment I'm not sure how I stayed standing. My ex-husband, my best friend, a baby. Delivered by the one woman on earth who never hid how little she thought of me. In public, in front of strangers, with a smile on her face. That is a very specific kind of cruelty, the kind that gets rehearsed in a mirror. And inside, in the place no one in that hallway could see, my mind went somewhere else entirely. I thought about Sophia Marchetti, the woman who'd been my roommate at the University of Oregon, the woman who stood beside me in a sage green dress on my wedding day and cried during the vows. I thought about how her calls had quietly stopped about 6 months before my marriage fell apart. How I'd told myself people just drift. How I hadn't let myself understand why until much later, when understanding couldn't hurt me anymore. I thought about how I was supposed to feel right then. Shattered, small, exactly the size Coraline had always wanted me to be, and what I actually felt, standing there in my white coat with a patient chart still tucked under my arm, was almost nothing at all. A flatness. A strange, settled quiet, like watching weather happen through a window. "Is that what you believe?" I said. That's all. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't loud. But something in the way I said it made her smile stumble for the first time. Just a hair. Because she'd come for tears. She'd come for anger, and I'd handed her a question instead. She blinked, recalibrated. I could almost see her reaching for a second blade, since the first one hadn't landed. I just think you should know what you lost, she pressed, though the certainty in her voice had thinned out, gone reedy. A grandson, a real family. Everything you couldn't give him. Everything you couldn't give him. Sit with that line for a second, the way I've sat with it many times since. Because that's the line that told me who Coraline really was. In her mind, a woman's worth was a ledger, and I'd come up short. And I really do think she believed she was defending her son. That's the thing about people like her. They're rarely evil the way movies want them to be. They've just built a story where their child is the hero and someone else has to be the failure. And they'll defend that story with everything they have. Because if it falls apart, they have to look at their own choices too. She wasn't holding a knife because she was a monster. She was holding it because the alternative was a mirror. I didn't answer right away. I glanced past her shoulder at the clock on the wall, then back to her face, to the lines around her mouth that always deepened when she was pleased with herself. Around us, the clinic kept breathing. A patient rolled past in a wheelchair. A nurse called a name over the intercom. Life just kept moving, indifferent, the way it always does, and for one strange moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You should get back to your sister, I said finally, and I stepped to the side to walk past her. That was when the door at the end of the corridor opened. A man came through it, tall, dressed in a charcoal suit instead of scrubs, which made him stand out in that hallway like a different species. He moved with a quiet kind of authority, the sort that made two nurses at the station straighten their shoulders without even noticing they'd done it. He scanned the hall once, and then his eyes found me, and something in his face went soft in a way that had nothing to do with hospital protocol. Daniela, he said, and he crossed the distance in a few easy strides. Coraline's head snapped toward him, and I wish you could have seen her face, because the recognition hit her in real time. I watched the color drain out of her skin, slow, like someone pulling a plug somewhere underneath. Her mouth opened, and for the first time in all the years I'd known her, absolutely nothing came out. His name was Elliot Graves, and he reached me first, his hand finding the small of my back, not a performance, not a statement, just the easy automatic gesture of two people who've learned the shape of each other. Sorry I'm late, he said, glancing at his watch. The board meeting ran long. Whitfield would not stop talking about the new cardiac wing. You're fine, I said, and something in my voice carried more than I meant it to, because his eyes flicked sideways, landing on Coraline, taking in the frozen face, the purse still clutched to her chest like it might shield her from whatever was unfolding. Mrs. Vance, he said, polite, but formal in a particular way, the formality that comes from knowing someone, not from distance. I didn't expect to see you here. Her mouth opened and shut. Twice. Elliot, she finally managed, and the name came out foreign in her mouth, like she was testing whether the floor under her was real. You two, you know each other. We're getting married in the fall, I said. Simple as that. And I want you to imagine watching that sentence land. Watching a woman try to force two pictures together that refused to fit. The picture she'd built me, divorced, discarded, presumably alone in some sad apartment eating dinner over the sink. And the reality, standing right in front of her with a good man's hand resting gently against my back. Two images. They would not reconcile. I could see her trying. But that wasn't even the thing that finished her. That came a few seconds later, when Elliot turned to me and said, almost like an afterthought, "Oh, I meant to call you earlier. The audit on Vance Holdings came back this morning. We found enough in the quarterly filings to bring it to the full board tonight." I felt Coraline go rigid beside me before I'd even fully understood the words. Vance Holdings, she repeated. Her voice was a thread. You're talking about my son's company." Elliot glanced at her, and I could see him recalculating in real time, realizing that the thing he'd treated as background noise had just become deeply, personally devastating to the woman standing 3 feet away. He chose his words carefully. "I run capital allocation for the firm that holds the majority stake," he said. "We've had concerns about the books for months. This morning we confirmed it. Money was moved out of client accounts that should never have been touched. And Mateo's name is on most of the transfers." The waiting room went quiet. Or it didn't, not really. I'm sure the intercom kept paging and the wheelchairs kept rolling. But in my ears, everything dropped away except the sound of Coraline's breathing. Sharp. Uneven. The breathing of a woman watching her son's entire life come apart in real time, delivered in the same calm, unhurried voice that had just complained about a board meeting running long. "That's not possible," she said. But there was no conviction left in it. None. Mateo wouldn't. He's careful. He's always been careful with money. I'm sorry, Elliot said. And he meant it. That's the part that still gets me, he meant it. He was the kind of man who could be gentle even while delivering the thing that ends you. There's a meeting tonight to decide what happens next. I'd expect he'll be hearing from legal before the day's out. And here's where my mind went somewhere again. Inside, quiet, where no one could see. I thought about Sophia. I thought about the shining little life Coraline had described to me with such relish only minutes earlier, the baby boy, the perfect family, the proof that I'd been the broken one all along. And I wondered, with no cruelty in it, only a kind of distant sadness, whether Sophia knew yet, whether anyone had told her, how long that happiness would hold once the accounts froze and the lawyers started calling, and the company that paid for the whole beautiful picture buckled under the weight of whatever Mateo had been hiding. I didn't want Sophia to suffer. That surprised me, a little. I just understood, suddenly and completely, that the story Coraline had built, the one where I was the failure, and everyone else got the happy ending, had never been true. Not for 1 second. I should go, Coraline said, abruptly. The color still gone from her face, her composure cracking at the seams in a way I had genuinely never witnessed in 15 years. She turned without a goodbye, and she walked fast toward the elevators, her heels clicking unevenly against the tile. That proud spine finally bent. And here's the thing I keep coming back to. I didn't feel triumphant watching her go. That surprised me more than anything else in those 10 impossible minutes. I had spent so long, so many sleepless nights, imagining exactly what it would feel like to see this woman humbled. I'd written the scene in my head 100 times. And now that it was actually happening, right in front of me, all I felt was a quiet, settled peace. The kind that arrives when you finally realize you no longer need someone else's downfall to feel whole. Let me tell you what I think this whole thing was really about, because it took me a long time to find it. We are taught, all of us, that revenge is the prize. That the goal is the moment your enemy falls and you're standing over them. But standing in that hallway, I understood something almost nobody in that room understood. The falling was never the point. I had already won, months earlier, in 100 ordinary moments I hadn't even noticed at the time. Every morning I got up and went to work when it hurt. Every evening I sat alone in a quiet apartment and slowly stopped being afraid of the quiet. Every patient I steadied with a calm hand while my own life was anything but. That was the victory. The hallway was just the receipt. If you have ever had someone look right through you like you were nothing, I need you to hear this. The people who try to make you small are almost always doing it because something in them feels small first. Coraline didn't attack me because I was weak. She attacked because she needed someone to be the failure so her own story could keep standing. That's not strength. That's a person leaning their whole weight against a door, terrified of what's on the other side. And if you've ever been the one walking away from a courtroom, or an empty house, or a marriage you genuinely believed would last your whole life, wondering in the silence afterward whether you'd ever feel steady again, I want you to look at where I'm standing now. Because 14 months earlier, I'd stood in that same kind of silence and asked myself that exact question. I did not expect an answer. And I certainly didn't expect it to arrive in a clinic hallway, delivered by a woman who'd spent 15 years convinced I was the disappointment in her son's life. But there it was. Undeniable, standing right in front of me in the shape of everything I'd quietly rebuilt without even realizing I was building it. Here's the lesson I'd ask you to actually carry out of this. The mistake most people make is thinking they have to prove the people who underestimated them wrong. You don't. You don't owe anyone the spectacle of your success. The most powerful thing I did in that hallway wasn't getting engaged to a good man, and it wasn't the fraud audit landing at the perfect moment. It was the question. Is that what you believe? 4 words that refused to give Coraline the reaction she'd traveled a year to collect. So here's something you can do today the next time someone tries to provoke you. Before you react, just ask yourself one thing. Whose story are they trying to make true? Because more often than not, your calm is the one thing they can't survive. And here's the question I want you to sit with after this ends. If the people who hurt you all disappeared tomorrow, and there was no one left to prove anything to, would you still be proud of the life you're building? Because that, right there, is the only audience that ever actually mattered. You okay? Elliot asked me, turning to face me fully, his hand finding mine. I am, I said. And for the first time in a very long time, I meant it all the way down. I walked out of that clinic with his hand in mine, lighter than I'd felt in years, finally understanding something simple and true. The best revenge is never the one you plan. It's the one that simply happens, on its own, because you kept living your life with your head held high while everyone around you was busy waiting for you to fall apart. Now I want to hear from you, because this one genuinely splits people. Comment a 1 if you think I handled it right, that the calm, the question, the walking away was exactly the move. Comment a 2 if part of you wishes I'd said more, wishes I'd let Coraline have it just once. Or comment a 3 if you think the real winner here was simply time, that I didn't do anything except keep living, and life did the rest. I read these. I really do. And I'm always amazed at how differently people see the same moment. And tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is there right now. I love seeing this little community light up from all over the world, someone listening at midnight in a parked car, someone with their morning coffee, someone who needed this exact story today and doesn't quite know how to say so. Drop your city. And if you've ever had your own Coraline, someone who tried to make you feel small for a life you didn't choose, tell me about it. You never know who's scrolling the comments needing to hear that they're not the only one. If this story moved you, even a little, do me a small favor before you go and tap that subscribe button. I share stories like this every single week, real moments of betrayal, quiet resilience, and the kind of justice that shows up exactly when you've stopped waiting for it. I'd love to have you here for the next one. Thank you for listening, truly. I'll see you in the next story. This is a fictional story, inspired by real emotional experiences, fully rewritten and reimagined in Portland, Oregon, to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental.